I remember the day my life changed forever. It was a Tuesday evening, and I had just returned from work, exhausted as usual. The house was quiet, with only the faint hum of the refrigerator breaking the silence. I dropped my keys on the kitchen counter and reached for a cold beer, ready to unwind. That's when I noticed something unusual on the kitchen table, a letter addressed to me, but the handwriting was unfamiliar. Laura. I called out, but there was no answer. She must have taken our daughter, Emma, to her piano lesson. Curiosity got the better of me, and I picked up the letter. The envelope felt heavy in my hands. As I tore it open, my heart began to race. The first few lines made my blood run cold. Dear John, there is something you need to know. Your wife, Laura, has been meeting someone every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. I thought you deserved to know the truth. The letter went on to provide details about the meetings, times, places, even descriptions of the man she was seeing. I felt a mix of disbelief and anger. How could Laura betray me like this? We had been married for 10 years, shared so many memories, and now this. When Laura and Emma came home, I tried to act normal, but it was hard. I could barely look at her without feeling a surge of betrayal. I decided not to argue or scandalize her. Instead, I would follow her the next day and uncover the truth myself. The following day, I took the afternoon off from work. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched Laura leave the house around 2 p.m. She looked happy, almost radiant, which only fueled my anger. I followed her discreetly, making sure to keep a safe distance. She drove to a quaint little cafe on the other side of town. I parked my car a block away and watched as she went inside. My palms were sweaty, and I could barely breathe. After a few minutes, a tall man with dark hair entered the cafe. They hugged and sat down at a corner table, laughing and chatting like old friends. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, a mix of heartbreak and fury. I couldn't believe my eyes. I wanted to burst in there and demand answers, but I knew it wasn't the right time. Instead, I took a few deep breaths and decided to confront Laura that evening. When she came home, I was sitting at the kitchen table, the letter in front of me. She looked surprised to see me home so early. John, you're home early. Is everything okay? She asked, her voice tinged with concern. I held up the letter. Care to explain this? Her face went pale as she recognized the handwriting. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Who is he, Laura? I demanded, my voice trembling with emotion. Who have you been meeting every Tuesday and Thursday? John, I can explain. Explain? How do you explain this? I shouted, the anger boiling over. We have a family, Laura. How could you do this to us? She sank into a chair. I'm so sorry, John. It's not what you think. Then what is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been cheating on me. It's complicated, she whispered. He's just a friend. We've been meeting to talk. I've been feeling so lonely, and he's been there for me. That's all. Just a friend. I scoffed. Friends don't meet in secret. Friends don't make you lie to your husband. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. Please, John, you have to believe me. I never meant for this to happen. I was just so lonely with you always working late. I needed someone to talk to. I felt a pang of guilt mixed with my anger. Had I been neglecting her? Was this partly my fault? But the betrayal was too fresh, too raw. We're going to get to the bottom of this, I said, my voice firm. No more lies, Laura. I want the truth. She nodded, her face streaked with tears. Okay, John. I'll tell you everything. That night, we talked for hours. Laura explained how she had met this man, David, at a local book club. They had bonded over their shared love of literature and had started meeting up for coffee. She insisted that nothing physical had happened between them, but I could see the guilt in her eyes. I didn't know if I could believe her, but one thing was certain. Our lives would never be the same again. Heartbroken and lost, I found myself wandering the streets late at night. The city was alive with neon lights and the distant hum of traffic, but it all felt like a blur. My mind was consumed with thoughts of Laura and the betrayal that had shattered our life together. I walked aimlessly, not caring where I ended up, just needing to escape the suffocating pain. What if she's sleeping with him? And she just lied to me. What if he was penetrating her and feeling my wife? The realization stabbed sharply into my heart. After what felt like hours, I stumbled upon a small, dimly lit bar. The sign outside read, "The Last Call," and something about it seemed fitting. I pushed open the door and walked inside. The place was nearly empty, with just a few patrons nursing their drinks at the bar. I found a seat at the far end, away from everyone, and ordered a whiskey. As I sipped my drink, I noticed a woman sitting a few stools down. She had a kind face and warm eyes, and she was reading a book, occasionally glancing around the room. For some reason, I felt drawn to her, like she was a beacon of light in my dark world. I must have been staring because she looked up and caught my eye, offering a small, friendly smile. "Rough night?" she asked, her voice gentle and understanding. I sighed, nodding. "You could say that." She closed her book and moved a little closer. "Want to talk about it? Sometimes it helps to get things off your chest." I hesitated for a moment, but then the words started pouring out. "My wife. She's been seeing someone else. I found out yesterday. We've been married for 10 years, and now I don't know what to do." Her expression softened with sympathy. "I'm really sorry to hear that. My name's Rachel, by the way." "John," I replied, shaking her outstretched hand. "Nice to meet you, Rachel." We talked for hours, sharing stories and thoughts. Rachel listened without judgment, her eyes full of empathy. She told me about her own experiences with heartache and loss, and for the first time in days, I felt understood. It was as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders, even if just for a little while. "So, what are you going to do now?" Rachel asked, taking a sip of her wine. "I don't know," I admitted, staring into my glass. "Part of me wants to try and work things out, but another part of me is just so angry and hurt. I can't even look at Laura without feeling betrayed." Rachel nodded. "It's natural to feel that way. Trust is hard to rebuild once it's broken, but it sounds like you still care about her." "I do," I said, my voice cracking. "But I don't know if that's enough." "Take it one day at a time," she advised. "Give yourself space to feel what you need to feel. And don't rush into any decisions. Healing takes time." Her words were a balm to my wounded heart. As the night wore on, I realized that meeting Rachel might have been the best thing that happened to me in a long time. She offered me a sense of comfort and clarity that I desperately needed. As we prepared to leave, Rachel gave me a reassuring smile. "If you ever need to talk again, you know where to find me." "Thank you, Rachel," I said sincerely. "I really appreciate it." "Take care, John," she replied, giving my arm a gentle squeeze before heading out the door. I watched her leave, feeling the strange sense of hope. Maybe things wouldn't be okay right away, but tonight had shown me that I wasn't alone. And for the first time since discovering Laura's betrayal, I believed that I might just get through this after all. Rachel and I began to see each other regularly after that night. Initially, it was just for coffee or a drink, sharing stories, and offering each other support. It felt good to have someone to talk to, someone who understood my pain without judgment. Our conversations flowed easily, and I found myself looking forward to our meetings. One evening, we met at the Last Call again. The bar had become our usual spot, a place where we could be ourselves without the burden of our troubles weighing us down. We sat in our usual corner, nursing our drinks and laughing at some silly joke Rachel had made. "John, can I ask you something?" Rachel said, her eyes serious. "Of course," I replied, curious about the shift in her tone. "Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive Laura?" she asked gently. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "I don't know, Rachel. Part of me wants to for the sake of our family, But another part of me can't forget what she did. It's like a wound that won't heal. Rachel reached across the table and took my hand. Forgiveness is a long process. You shouldn't rush it, and you deserve to take care of yourself too. Her touch sent a jolt through me, and I realized how much I had come to rely on her presence. Her kindness and understanding had become a lifeline for me. As the night went on, the lines between friendship and something more began to blur. One evening, as we left the bar, the cool night air wrapping around us, Rachel hesitated outside. "John, there's something I've been wanting to say." "What is it?" I asked, my heart pounding. "I think I'm falling for you," she said softly, her eyes searching mine. I felt a rush of emotions, confusion, guilt, and an undeniable attraction. "Rachel, I feel the same way. But what about Laura? I can't ignore that I'm still married." She stepped closer, her face inches from mine. "I know, and I don't want to complicate things for you, but I can't help how I feel." Before I knew it, we were kissing, the world around us fading away. It was a kiss filled with longing and desperation, a need to escape the pain and find solace in each other. When we finally pulled away, we were both breathless. "Maybe we should take this slow," I suggested, trying to regain some semblance of control. Rachel nodded, but the look in her eyes told me that slow was not what either of us wanted. "Let's just see where this goes," she said. As weeks turned into months, our relationship deepened. What began as innocent conversations quickly turned into something more. We spent more time together, our connection growing stronger with each passing day. I felt guilty about Laura, but at the same time, I couldn't deny my growing feelings for Rachel. Our relationship became my escape from the pain of betrayal and the unbridled love and kisses that my wife was supposed to give me and gave to someone else. Now that love is being given to me by Rachel. One afternoon, we met at a park, away from the prying eyes of the bar. We sat on a bench, watching children play and enjoying the warmth of the sun. "John, do you ever think about the future?" Rachel asked, leaning her head on my shoulder. "All the time," I admitted, "but it's hard to see what it looks like with everything so messed up." She lifted her head and looked at me. "I want to be part of that future, if you'll have me." Her words filled me with both hope and fear. "I want that too, Rachel. But we have to be careful. Laura will find out eventually, and I don't want to hurt anyone more than I already have." "I understand," she said, squeezing my hand. "But we can't keep hiding forever." I knew she was right. Our secret meetings couldn't last forever, and it was only a matter of time before Laura found out. But for now, we had each other, and that was enough to get through the pain and uncertainty. As we sat there, lost in our thoughts, I realized how much Rachel had come to mean to me. She was my solace, my escape, and perhaps my future. But the road ahead was fraught with challenges, and I knew that sooner or later we would have to face the consequences of our actions. For now, though, I allowed myself to enjoy the moment, holding on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, things would work out in the end. It was a Friday night, and Rachel and I decided to meet at the last call again. The bar had become our sanctuary, a place where we could forget the chaos of our lives and just be together. We sat in our usual corner, laughing and enjoying each other's company, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit. As the night wore on, I glanced toward the entrance and felt my heart drop. There, standing in the doorway, was Laura. Her face was a mask of shock and hurt, her eyes locked onto me and Rachel. Time seemed to slow down as she walked towards us, her steps deliberate and measured. "John," she said, her voice trembling with anger and disbelief. "What the hell is this?" "Laura, I can explain." I started, but the words felt hollow even as I said them. "Explain?" she shouted, attracting the attention of everyone in the bar. "Explain how you're here with another woman while I'm at home taking care of our daughter. How you've been lying to me, sneaking around." Rachel stood up, trying to calm the situation. "Laura, Please, let's talk about this calmly. Calmly. Laura turned her fury onto Rachel. Who do you think you are? You have no right to talk to me. I stepped between them, trying to diffuse the tension. Laura, this isn't Rachel's fault. It's my fault. I was hurt, and I made a mistake. A mistake, she repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. This isn't a mistake, John. This is a betrayal. You're no better than me. Her words stung, and I felt a mix of anger and guilt. You pushed me to this, Laura. You lied to me first. Don't you dare try to pin this on me, she spat. I may have made mistakes, but I was trying to fix things between us. And this is how you repay me. Rachel tried to speak again, but Laura cut her off. Stay out of this. This is between me and my husband. The argument escalated, our voices rising with each accusation. The pain and anger we had both been harboring came spilling out, raw and unfiltered. You were never there, Laura. You were always too busy with your own life to notice what was happening to us, I shouted, my frustration boiling over. When you were supposed to be next to me, but you were lying with your legs spread in someone else's bed. And you think this is the solution, she retorted, tears streaming down her face. You think running to another woman will fix our problems. I didn't run to her, I said, my voice breaking. I found comfort in someone who listened, who cared. Comfort, she laughed bitterly. You mean an escape. You were too cowardly to face our problems. So you found someone else. I felt my world crumbling around me. The life Laura and I had built together was falling apart, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This was the end of us. Rachel, sensing the hopelessness of the situation, gently touched my arm. John, maybe we should leave. This isn't helping anyone. Laura's eyes flicked to Rachel's hand on my arm, and her face twisted with rage. Get out, she said, her voice low and dangerous. Both of you, get out of here and don't come back. I looked at Laura, my heart breaking for the pain I had caused her. I'm sorry, Laura. I never wanted this to happen. She turned away, unable to look at me. Just go, John. I can't even stand to look at you right now. Rachel and I left the bar in silence, the weight of the confrontation heavy on our shoulders. As we walked to her car, I felt a deep sense of loss. The life I had known was over, and I was left standing in the ruins of my own making. I'm so sorry, John, Rachel said softly, her hand squeezing mine. It's not your fault, I replied, though the words offered little comfort. This was bound to happen. I just wish it hadn't been this way. We drove in silence, the gravity of what had just happened settling in. I knew that there was no going back, that the road ahead would be filled with difficult choices and painful consequences. But for now, I held onto Rachel's hand, finding solace in her presence amidst the chaos of my unraveling life. After the dust settled from the explosive confrontation at the bar, I found myself standing at a crossroads. The next few weeks were a blur of tense conversations and sleepless nights. Laura and I had to make a decision about our future, but neither of us knew where to start. The wounds from our betrayals were too deep, and the trust we once had seemed like a distant memory. We decided to try counseling, hoping that a neutral third party could help us navigate the tangled mess of our emotions. The first session was awkward, both of us sitting on opposite ends of the couch, barely able to look at each other. The counselor, a gentle-spoken woman named Dr. Harris, began by asking us to share our feelings. John, why don't you start? She suggested, her eyes kind and encouraging. I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. I feel lost. Laura and I have shared so much, but I don't know if we can ever get back to where we were. The trust is gone. Laura nodded, her eyes filled with tears. I feel the same way. I love you, John, but everything feels broken now. I don't know if we can fix it. Dr. Harris leaned forward. Rebuilding trust takes time and effort from both sides. Are you both willing to put in that effort? I want to try, Laura said softly, glancing at me. But it's hard when the pain is still so fresh. I looked at her, seeing the hurt in her eyes. I want to try too, but I'm not sure if trying will be enough. The sessions continued for a few weeks, but it became clear that the wounds were too deep to heal quickly. Each session was a reminder of how much we had hurt each other and how difficult it would be to move past the betrayals. The more we talked, the more it felt like we were just reopening old wounds instead of healing them. One evening, after yet another emotionally draining session, Laura and I sat in the living room, the silence between us heavy. "John, we need to talk," she said finally, breaking the silence. I nodded, feeling a knot form in my stomach. "I know. I've been thinking a lot about us, about our future," she continued, her voice trembling. "And I don't think we can keep doing this to each other. It's not fair to either of us." "I've been thinking the same thing," I admitted, my heart aching. "I don't want to keep hurting you, Laura." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I love you, John, but maybe loving each other means knowing when to let go." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I knew she was right, but accepting it was another matter. "What do we do now?" "We take it one step at a time," she said, wiping her tears. "We figure out how to move forward, even if it's not together." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of our decision hanging in the air. The next few days were filled with difficult conversations about dividing our assets, discussing custody arrangements for Emma, and figuring out how to tell our families. Meanwhile, my relationship with Rachel continued to grow. She was my solace in the storm, offering me a sense of comfort and hope. But even that wasn't without its challenges. Starting fresh with Rachel meant dealing with the complexities of our pasts and the uncertainty of our future. One evening, as Rachel and I sat on her couch, I confessed my fears. "I'm scared, Rachel. Scared of what the future holds, scared of making the same mistakes." She took my hand, her touch warm and reassuring. "John, we're both scared, but we're in this together. We'll take it one day at a time." "Do you think we can make this work?" I asked, searching her eyes for certainty. "I believe we can," she said with a smile. "But it's going to take patience and trust, and we have to be honest with each other, no matter what." "I want to build a future with you," I said, my voice filled with determination. "But I don't want to hurt you the way I hurt Laura." Rachel leaned in and kissed me gently. "We'll figure it out, John. Together." As I held her close, I realized that while the path ahead was uncertain, it was also filled with possibilities. Laura and I had shared a beautiful past, but it was time to look toward the future. A future that, despite its challenges, held a glimmer of hope. I knew that the journey would be long and difficult, but with Rachel by my side, I felt ready to face whatever came next. It was the hardest decision of my life, but it was also the beginning of a new chapter, one that I hoped would be filled with love, trust, and second chances. In the end, Laura and I decided to part ways. The divorce was painful, but we both knew it was the right choice. The process was long and filled with emotional highs and lows, but eventually we signed the final papers. It felt surreal, like closing a chapter of a book I never thought would end. The day I moved out was bittersweet. I packed my belongings, memories flooding back with each item I placed in a box. Laura stood in the doorway, watching silently. We had shared so much, and now we were saying goodbye. "Take care of yourself, John," she said softly, tears brimming in her eyes. "You too, Laura," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "I wish you all the best." We hugged briefly, a final gesture of the bond we once shared. As I drove away, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. It was the end of one life and the beginning of another. I moved in with Rachel, and we began building our life together. It wasn't easy. Adjusting to a new routine, a new environment, and a new relationship was challenging. There were moments when I doubted my decision, wondering if I had made the right choice. One evening, as Rachel and I sat on the porch, watching the sunset, I voiced my fears. "Rachel, What if this doesn't work out? What if I've made a huge mistake? She looked at me, her eyes filled with understanding. John, it's normal to have doubts. Change is hard, and we're both going through a lot. But we're in this together, and we'll figure it out. Her words comforted me, but the doubt still lingered. Despite that, I pushed forward, determined to make this new beginning work. I found a new job, something completely different from what I had done before. It was challenging but rewarding, and it gave me a sense of purpose. Making new friends was another hurdle. I had always been reserved, but with Rachel's encouragement, I started to open up. We went to social gatherings, met her friends, and slowly I began to build a new social circle. One afternoon, after a particularly good day at work, I came home to find Rachel in the kitchen, cooking dinner. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the air, and I felt a warmth spread through me that I hadn't felt in a long time. "Something smells amazing," I said, walking over to her and wrapping my arms around her waist. She smiled, leaning back against me. "I'm trying a new recipe. Hope you like it." "I'm sure I will," I replied, kissing the top of her head. As we sat down to eat, I realized how much my life had changed. It wasn't perfect, and there were still challenges, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. Rachel reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm proud of you, John. You've come a long way." "Thanks, Rachel," I said, squeezing her hand. "I couldn't have done it without you." "We're a team," she said with a smile, "and we'll keep moving forward, one step at a time." Her words were simple, but they carried a profound truth. The journey was far from over, but I was no longer walking it alone. With Rachel by my side, I felt stronger, more capable of facing whatever came next. As I looked around our cozy home, I felt a sense of peace. The past had been painful, but it had also led me to a new beginning, one filled with love, hope, and endless possibilities. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited about the future. We finished dinner and moved to the living room, where we curled up on the couch together. The warmth of Rachel's presence, the comfort of our home, and the promise of what was to come filled me with a deep sense of contentment. The road ahead might be uncertain, but I knew we would face it together, one step at a time.